it if you want. Okay, so thanks again. I know we've been talking about this project for quite a while, really since last May of last year. We have given a couple presentations to some groups in town, Rotary, and other ones on roundabouts in general, but we do get questions every once in a while about what's going on with Worcester's roundabouts, county-wide roundabouts, ODOT's doing some roundabouts. So our hope here would be to hopefully share some information in general about roundabouts. We have some people here from our design consultant, CDSO, from our local ODOT district, and we also have Mr. Madigan here from the city schools as well. If there's any questions or clarifications that people would have. So we're going to go over a few things. John and I, John Rice, the city engineer, we're going to sort of tag team this presentation this evening. And we're going to talk about why are we building roundabouts in general, what's our future plans, and then what's the specific plans for Burbank, Winkler, and Oldham. And I think to really have a good discussion on that, we need to look at some of the definitions of things. Not everybody thinks the same thing when we say the word roundabout, so we want to make sure we understand that. Some of the history, some of the data behind it, behind roundabouts, why they're being built all over Ohio and the country at this point. A little bit of myth busting, things that are out there that aren't true that we like to talk about. And then we have some real life experiences, more recent, in very similar situations that we like to share with council. So, real quick, there is a difference between what is a traffic circle and what is a modern roundabout. A traffic circle is, a circle, but then it has T intersections with stop signs. That is not a modern roundabout. All of the roundabouts you see in Worcester are modern roundabouts, so they have the angled entries. They have the yield controlled, those kind of things. You have to slow down to enter into those types of things. So there is a pretty significant difference between what would be an old traffic circle, something you might see, and something like National Lampoon's European Vacation, where they're going around that would be a traffic circle, than what a modern roundabout would be. So a couple things that I started to talk about when it came to what are features of a modern roundabout. There's that center island. It's there, it's raised a little bit, shields some headlights. It's there to limit distractions, maintains your focus on the road. In order to enter, you have to go through the splitter island, so that reduces your speed. And a lot of times you'll see in a couple that we just built that you have, they're offset a little bit, so you have to angle into them. That reduces your speed as well. Those splitter islands also not only direct traffic, it eliminates turn movements. You can only go one way when you go into a roundabout. There's aprons, paved aprons, both along the edges on the outside and in the inside. And those are meant to be driven upon if you have to, larger vehicles, those kind of things. So you can always get through the roundabout. I can actually give you an example. One of the first roundabouts we were building, I actually watched a semi-trailer back around it when they were delivering some stone to put in it. So it probably took some skill, a little extra skill by that particular driver, but you can, large vehicles can't have vehicles. So with that, I want to turn it over to John, and he's going to go over some more specifics on the design of the roundabout.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, so why has Worcester been constructing roundabouts? So 3 main reasons: improvement, intersection safety enhancement, improved traffic flow and intersection efficiency, and lower overall life cycle costs. So ODOT has design standards for intersections that provide guidance and warrants for various intersection improvements. So these include looking at factors such as vehicular volume, pedestrian volume, school crossings, signal systems, crash history, roadway networks, and rail crossing proximity. So then based on these factors, ODOT has 3 types of treatments for intersections: stop control, traffic signal, or roundabout. And the requirement for a traffic signal is based on a warrant analysis that involves consideration of one or more of the above referenced warrant criteria. If a signal is warranted, an alternative to a signal is a roundabout. The ODOT manual states that generally roundabouts can process high left turn volumes, remember that'll be important later on, more efficiently than all-way stop control or traffic signals, as well as accommodate a wide range of side road volumes. A more objective way to compare the performance of a roundabout to that of a traffic signal is level of service. Again, we'll discuss that in more detail later on. All right, so again, roundabouts, they're a proven intersection safety enhancement. You can see on the right-hand side there, compared to two-way stop controlled intersection or a signalized intersection, that roundabouts have quite a reduction in fatal and injury crashes. And you can see why just by taking a quick look at this diagram, comparing a standard intersection to a modern roundabout, and it greatly reduces the number of conflict points. So a standard intersection has 32 vehicular conflict points and 24 pedestrian, whereas a modern roundabout, they only have 8 vehicular and 8 pedestrian. So that directly affects the number of crashes, and the geometry and the speed reduction also affect the severity of the crashes. All right, and this is some data provided by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Modern roundabout versus standard stop signal controlled intersection. Total crashes reduced by over 40%. All injury crashes reduced by over 75%. Serious fatal crashes reduced by 90%. Pedestrian crashes reduced 30 to 40%. So all across the board, reduction in crashes and then lower life cycle costs. The roundabout pavement and landscaping have a 20-year lifespan compared to standard signalized intersection, around 15 years for signal equipment. So a little more detail on the improved traffic efficiency and level of service. So traffic efficiency, it has a higher, roundabouts have a higher volume capacity due to the limited stopping. 30 to 50% increase, it naturally slows traffic. The raised splitter islands separate entering and exiting traffic and provide safe places for pedestrians to cross. And the level of service increases due to fewer stops, which means less delays for all the approaches, less congestion, and ease of maneuverability. So some more information from the Institute for Highway Safety. When roundabouts replace four-way stop controlled intersections, vehicle delays are reduced 13 to 23%. Stopped vehicles are reduced 14 to 37%. When roundabouts replace traffic signals, vehicle delays are reduced almost 90%, and vehicle stops are reduced 56%. Overall intersection improvements when roundabouts are installed, vehicle delays are reduced 65%, vehicle stops are reduced 52%. And one study found that installing roundabouts in place of traffic signals or stop signs reduced emissions by 15 to 45%. So based on those studies, this institute estimated that if 10% of signalized intersections in the U.S. were converted to roundabouts, that vehicle delays would be reduced by more than 981 million hours, and fuel consumption would be reduced by more than 654 million gallons. All right, roundabout challenges. So some things with roundabouts, the initial cost, $1.5 to $2 million for a single lane roundabout, whereas a signalized intersection costs anywhere from $400,000 to $750,000. The land and the right-of-way required, and also the skepticism, unfamiliarity. In general, it's been found that 30% favor roundabouts prior to construction, and then 70% after construction. So roundabout cost includes complete utility replacement, water, storm, sanitary as well. Signalized intersection cost, so the $400,000 is with signal equipment only. Estimated around $750,000 with equipment and turn lanes, and if it's equipment, turn lanes, and utilities, $1.5 million million or more for a signalized intersection. While roundabouts are relatively expensive to construct, they do cost less than the average cost of a single fatal car crash. So AAA estimates that a single fatal motor vehicle crash costs the nation $6 million. And that is one reason why ODOT considers roundabouts to be very cost effective if they reduce fatalities and injuries. The unfamiliarity skepticism statistics have changed over the years as roundabouts have become more common. We have seen this shift locally as well. City administration has actually received a good bit of feedback, which has been overwhelmingly positive. They received some negative comments from a handful of residents, mostly regarding pedestrian safety and adjacent property impacts. But some of the comments they received include, I think it's a good location for any improvement. Like many people, I have seen what seem like many near misses. I think this location is an obvious choice for traffic flow improvement / a peanut roundabout. I like roundabouts. This is a great location for a roundabout, and I can't wait for this project to be done. So, modern roundabout history. Roundabouts were developed in the UK in the mid to late 1950s. They proliferated in Europe and Australia. The first was constructed in the US in 1990 in Nevada. In general, the US has been slow adopters. There were 150 in 1990, but today there's more than 8,000 in the US. And Ohio is actually a bit behind most of the country. We have 450 to 500 roundabouts. We're now in the top 10 of the country. Most of the US roundabouts were built in the last 20 years, and state by state, just a few statistics. Florida has almost 1,600, California has 840, Texas has a little over 800, Pennsylvania a little over 200, and South Dakota, they're working on it, they have 17. Maybe someday they'll catch up. Okay, navigating a modern roundabout. So just a few simple rules for navigating a roundabout. Slow down upon approach. Look for and yield to pedestrians before entering the roundabout. Look left and yield to vehicles that are already in the roundabout. Drive counterclockwise. Do not stop in the roundabout. And look for and yield to pedestrians before exiting the roundabout. So even though the US and Ohio have been catching up on the application and installation of modern roundabouts, some people still have confusion about how to navigate a modern roundabout. So this is a nice, simple attempt to summarize. And there's also a cute video, if anyone wants to see that, we can share that at some point on how to navigate one of these. All right, roundabout myth busting. So some of the common myths about roundabouts. Large vehicles can't navigate them. They hurt businesses. They aren't safe for pedestrians and bicyclists, and they aren't safe for older adults. So to speak to each of these, so modern roundabouts are designed for farm equipment, emergency vehicles, buses, and semis. The radius and the raised truck apron islands are incorporated into the design. And schools have indicated there's no issues with buses navigating the multiple existing roundabouts in the city. As far as businesses, the slower speeds actually improve the ease of parking, walking, and biking. There's increased ability to locate and approach businesses. A study in Golden, Colorado saw a retail sale increase 60% along a road where a series of roundabouts were installed. And Meyer was actually initially concerned about this, but they eventually saw the benefits to having a roundabout. As far as safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, the splitter islands actually allow pedestrians to watch only one direction of traffic, which is beneficial for pedestrians trying to cross the street. The slower vehicle speeds make crossing safer. There's more time for both pedestrians and drivers to react. Bikes can cross with peds or ride in a slow-moving vehicle lane. We did get a statement from Wooster City School Superintendent Dave Tudor, and he said that they have had no issues with the existing roundabouts. I witnessed him improve traffic flow and safety for both vehicles and pedestrians, and that their observations coupled with experience in the new roundabouts on Oak Hill and feedback from the police department and city officials suggested the proposed roundabout could alleviate traffic congestion and enhance pedestrian safety. And as far as roundabouts aren't good for older adults, by 2025, 25% of all drivers will be over the age of 65. 40% of all car crashes involving drivers over 65 occur at intersections. Older adults have increased difficulty judging left turn gaps. Roundabouts help by eliminating those decisions. Roundabouts eliminate head-on and right-angle collisions. Collisions are limited in number and severity. And as far as old folks and roundabouts, we do have handouts from AARP. They have actually prepared a handout on roundabouts. So I think we have some of those out in the lobby if anyone wants to look at those. All right. So Worcester's roundabout plans, why is Worcester building roundabouts? Again, improve safety of intersections, increase intersection traffic flow efficiency, reduce life cycle costs, take advantage of state and federal funds. So what are our plans for future roundabouts? So based on, we have a 10-year infrastructure plan that we maintain, and based on that, we evaluate the intersections based on safety, level of service, condition of the equipment, and remaining useful life. And then we prioritize intersections based on that evaluation and funding availability. So again, for intersection improvements, going back, we talked about the warrants for stop control intersections. So we look at those warrants, we look at level of service, we look at various ODOT and other agency criteria and modeling, and then we look at the funding criteria. So if stop control is warranted, can a roundabout be constructed? So we know they require more land and right of way, the initial costs are more, but we also know they will be safer and they will increase the level of service. So local roundabout plans. So here are 3 that are up and coming around the county. There's one on State Route 585 and 5 Points, that intersection, that's a couple years out. This year, the county will be constructing one in Smithville, Western, and Honeytown. And then next year, ODOT will be doing one at 585 and the State Route 94604 intersection. So you can contact the county engineer, ODOT, if you want more information on those projects. All right, local roundabout plans. So we have 5 of them already that are in or partially inside the city. And this year we'll be getting another one at 585 in Garris Chapel. And then the future plans, or plans for future roundabouts, include the one at Burbank, Oldham, Winkler, and then also the hospital area, the Bell, Cleveland, Portage, that corridor over there. All right, roundabout project costs. So you can see here the cost for the completed roundabouts, and as far as the city's actual share of the total, we've only paid around 2% of the total cost of these roundabouts. So we've actually made out quite well as far as what we have paid for the roundabouts. And the upcoming plan proposed, we're estimating $3.5 to $4 million for the Oldham, Burbank, Winkler, and the hospital area, that's still a little ways out. We're not quite sure what that one's going to be yet. All right, so now that we're experts on roundabouts, we'll get into the peanut or double roundabout concept. So this is a picture of a peanut roundabout, or it's also known as an oblongabout. Much easier to say peanut roundabout, but that's another term you may hear. So it's simply a combination of roundabouts or one oblong roundabout connecting multiple offset intersections. And it essentially functions as a single roundabout, just has an extra wiggle in it.
John, can I interrupt you a second?
Yes.
Can you go back to that slide? So that differs from what we're talking about here, and that's showing 2 lanes, and we're talking 1 lane here.
Correct.
So that's a little bit of a
Yep.
confusing in that one.
Yep.
You were just showing a concept.
Right.
All right, so now we have some examples of roundabouts in similar areas to the one being proposed. So the first one is in Hilliard, and this is near schools, athletic fields, senior living subdivisions, commercial property. And there are actually 4 roundabouts that were installed in this high traffic area. Again, adjacent to a high school, middle school, and elementary school. There's a soccer park, ball fields, and community center located in the same area. And these roundabouts safely and efficiently serve a high volume of pedestrian and vehicular traffic on the roadways. And these are mostly multi-lane just because of the traffic volume in that area. All right, the next one is in Kent. And again, there's multiple roundabouts here. 2 larger ones and a smaller one installed in a mixed-use, high-traffic area. They're adjacent to a college campus and athletic facilities, and they serve commercial, residential, and student housing located in the same area as well. And again, they safely and efficiently serve a high volume of pedestrian and vehicular traffic on roadways. The next one is in Dublin. And this is a large roundabout installed adjacent to a high school as well as a residential area. And they safely and efficiently serve, or this one safely and efficiently serves, a high volume of pedestrian and vehicular traffic on the roadway. And the one in Delaware may look familiar. This one is a peanut roundabout. It's adjacent to a high school and a residential area. You can see the high school there, athletic fields, subdivisions. And the next slide actually shows the one in Kent, and they have done a little study because there are roundabouts among signalized intersections. So they did a comparison of the number of pedestrians using each of those intersections and the number of pedestrian crashes over a 6-year period. And they found a significant reduction in the intersections with the roundabouts. So you can see here, 1 pedestrian crash for almost 6,500 pedestrians using the 2 roundabout locations, compared to 5 pedestrian crashes at the 4 signalized intersections with 784 pedestrians. So a significant decrease in pedestrian crashes at these intersections in Kent. All right, and this is one you may have heard about. It was in the news recently. It's a peanut roundabout that was constructed north of Ridgeville in Marion County. And in December, Fox 8 had a news article on it. City officials called it a much anticipated peanut-shaped roundabout project. In the article, according to ODOT representatives, they stated that roundabouts were safer than traffic signals and could move traffic more efficiently with fewer delays. And ODOT also recognized that roundabouts aren't typically perceived as a popular solution among the public, but said much of that is due to the lack of education about their benefits and them being relatively new traffic pattern for many areas in Ohio. The public reaction usually flips to positive within a year or 2 of them being installed and open to the public.
And what we tried to do was come up with some, as many examples as we had that were similar, either in location, the demographics, and I think what you saw there, where there's a lot of roundabouts that are in operation right now in areas very, very similar to where we're at. In many cases, there's more traffic and more pedestrians crossing those. I don't think we'll have 7,000 people crossing like they did in the one example. But what it does show is they are absolutely safe. for pedestrians to cross, for high volumes of pedestrians to cross when there's high volumes of traffic. So that's what we were trying to do. We realized every case is going to be a little bit different, but I think there are enough of those examples to show that they've covered any type of application, you know, that we're going to have here in Wooster. And they just work. They just work. And ODOT's had, you know, many years now of data. So all the statistics that Sean was throwing out, we got those from ODOT, from Federal Highway Administration, and from other organizations like that. And those are fairly recent data because they continue to collect that data and to update that. And like I said, we have some ODOT representatives here, Julie here from District 3, that I'm sure she can answer some questions later if you have questions about some of that data. And this one's very recent. It's not quite as built up around it as, you know, as ours would be, but there's still a good bit of traffic. I asked Chief Staley if he could reach out, if he knew the chief in North Ridgeville, and he actually, you know, did have some acquaintance with him because they had the same designer do a fire station there, very similar to what we did, renovating a fire station. So he had a little bit of familiarity, and I said, why don't you reach out and just find out what he thinks of this, just Lynn. And then I think I shared that quote with you that I'll share for the rest of the public here. And the North Ridgeville Fire Chief said, you know, so far we have no problems with it. The community loves it. As a matter of fact, it cured a problem intersection that had a lot of accidents and near misses. The only negative they had was during construction. We've been through that. But actually was completed fast. It's a normally busy area. The roundabout was designed to accommodate large trucks such as our ladder truck. You can actually run over the curves in the center with a large truck. It's designed that way. I highly recommend it. I mean, that to me says a lot. And that's part of the reason that we are proposing ours is there are current times now, you can ask Chief Staley or Chief Fisher about this, where it's so backed up, at least a couple times a day on weekends if there's sporting events, that it actually causes us problems now responding. If we have a response and they have to drive through there, it's backed up, it's difficult to get through there. So as it exists now, it does affect response times. And we would like to eliminate that or lower that as much as possible. So anyway, that's why we went through a lot of those examples and reached out to some people that can give us some objective answers. So this is the concept, and we're going to go through how we got to this one. So, but I want to show you this up front. We were just talking about buses. We were talking about fire trucks. This is to scale. So the fire trucks you see there and the buses are actual size compared to the width and the length of the roundabout and the geometry, so you can see that you can navigate that. And as John said, this is simply, if you want to think about it, is one elongated roundabout. So there's nothing, you know, really unique about it other than we've got some odd angles of roadways. And it's really the only way to move the traffic through here. And we'll talk about some of that. We actually, I mean, I've been in the city for 25 years. I remember looking at this intersection back close to 20 years ago. And I know prior to my time, Rick Boswell, former city engineer, actually that brought it up as an intersection we need to start looking at because we know there's going to be development. We know there's going to be more traffic in the north end of Wooster at the time. So it's been on our radar. So what we looked at, what I actually analyzed back in the day, was changing the signal timing. Is there any way we can change the timing? Unfortunately, there was just too much traffic to accommodate the number of, and too much traffic, too many turns in certain directions. You just couldn't adjust that signal timing enough in order to make it function better. The other thing that we looked at were turn lanes, and John's going to talk about that a little bit. And unfortunately, the problem with turn lanes is where you need that Q link is in between the two intersections. So there's simply not enough room. And so what you see now is then that overflows down Winkler, up Oldman, north. You know, I've seen it up past the driveway at the safety center. I've seen it all the way down to Highland before, depending on what's going on there. So we want to eliminate that. We also looked at realigning the roads. That was one of the things I looked at. Could that? So the one you won't see here is the option where you realign Winkler to match up with Oldman, because you'd be taking out at least a couple houses, and we just didn't think that was viable. We did look at one time at realigning back several years ago. 10, 15 years ago, aligning Oldman. Unfortunately, you had to go right through, some county property, the county communications building, the tower that's there, and that just wasn't an option at that time to look at that, and they still use that building in that communications tower today. So that really wasn't an option. And there wasn't, I'm talking 10, 15 or more years ago, there just wasn't a will at the time on the county commissioner's part to eat into that much of a deal at that time. So we did look, so that's why nothing has happened for these years. Then the other thing more recently, and John and our engineering consultant will get into this, is even if you realign them, one signalized intersection with the amount of traffic is still a very low level of service. So we would say that's a lot of money to realign a road to not really solve an issue. So we would recommend that, because to me that's not good expenditure of taxpayer money. If you're going to fix it right, which is around. So even if you realign it, we say put a roundabout there, because that's really the only way traffic's going to flow through that intersection. Can handle that. We did look at accidents, but like John said, accidents is only 1 of 8 warrants. So anytime we do an intersection improvement, most of them are due to traffic efficiency backups, level of service. Sometimes, like when we did the Burbank and Smithville Western, we did have some fatalities there back in here. So that one did warrant it. A lot of the other intersections that we do are simply level of service, backups, delays, and then trying to look ahead, plan ahead, so we don't have those severe accidents in the future as traffic volume increases. So there were accidents. I look back at the last 3 years initially, there were about 7 or 8 accidents, mostly rear ends, because people are backed up so far, you're not expecting that car to be stopped, people run into their rear end. We went back a little bit further, and Ms. Knappich asked about it, and it's about the same, 7, 8, 9 a year over the last, say, 10 years. We couldn't go back quite that far, we didn't get that far. But what that shows is there's continues to be accidents caused by people stopped at those intersections. So we would like to eliminate that, and we don't want to have more severe ones as more development happens. There's housing development, schools looking at potential campus area up there, and the commercial development. So we're trying to think ahead and plan for that. So as there's more as there are more volume and more congestion, there's only going to be more accidents up there. So did reach out to Bob Weaver. He's the district deputy director over at District 3 that Julie works for. He's also a former Wooster resident, so he was here for a lot of years. Drove through that. We had a meeting on another subject that we were working with ODOT on, and we brought up this project to him, and his response was, "Oh, I'm very familiar with that. I know exactly where they drive through there all the time. This intersection is a great fit for the plan Worcester has in place, and they advocate for the same." So that's a resident, an engineer, just very familiar with the area. So Burbank, Winkler, Olin, how did we get to the point where we proposing a roundabout? What were the design considerations? Number one, high traffic volume, and it's only going to get worse. Accidents were something we did look at. Large vehicles, buses go through there. We know that large fire trucks go through there, so we want to make sure. And you can see some pictures there where you can see both large trucks and buses going through roundabouts. Safety vehicles, we want to get fire trucks, ambulances through there. Tractor trailers. We want to make sure pedestrians and bikes can get across there safely, even though I think you're going to have more people still dropping their kids off. If you see it, there's backups on Oldman from people dropping their kids off. I can't fix that with the roundabout because they're dropping off people at the high school or the elementary there. But there is a soccer field there. Kids, I see people on bikes crossing our time. We want to make sure we put in the safest intersection improvements there that we can for pedestrian and bikes. And if you look at the other end of Oldman, where the park is, I mean, you see how really efficient, how thoughtful that is for getting pedestrians and bikes across. We want to make sure we're looking at adjacent residents and their driveways, so we have looked at that. John will get into that a little bit more. The impacts on the property owners, and we've heard several of them both come here and speak, and some emails that we've gotten, their concerns about the impacts to their both their driveways and to their properties. So we tried to take that into account as you'll see this as we look through various options. And just the impact and the influence on nearby community facilities like the safety center, the schools, those kind of things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John. He can get into a couple of the details of what we did, I think with some of the adjacent properties and
Okay. So yeah, as far as the large vehicle design considerations, so just like the other roundabouts, the paved truck aprons around the center island, paved aprons at the entrance and exit lanes to accommodate those larger trucks, pedestrian and bicycle design considerations. So this roundabout will be very similar to the one at Oak Hill and Oldman, with pedestrian bike crossings at each leg, safety zones in each splitter island. And as far as the driveway design considerations, so with the drives and the configuration of this roundabout, we did have to shorten or divide some of the splitter islands to allow for turning movements in and out of the driveways. So we have looked at that. The design consultant has taken that into consideration to make sure that movements in and out of driveways are the same. All right, so looking at some alternatives, so one thing that we could do is add turn lanes. So this would be adding turn lanes on Burbank, Winkler, and Oldman, and maintaining signals at each intersection. So we would have to add turn lanes for southbound traffic on Burbank, north of Oldman, which would significantly increase the impact and disturbance to properties, would increase the number of properties impacted, and the turn lanes would not solve the most severe vehicle delay and queue length deficiencies for current traffic volumes. The added turn lanes increase the number of lanes required to be crossed for left turns into driveways. We'd also have to add turn lanes for northbound Burbank south of Winkler, which would significantly increase impact and disturbance to properties. Again, increase the number of properties impacted, and again, would not solve the most severe vehicle delay and queue length issue. The most severe deficiency occurs between Winkler and Oldman. There's simply not enough room between the intersections to solve the queue length shortage. Excuse me. And that's really the issue, is just the proximity of these two intersections and the lack of space for those left turn lanes between them. So adding these turn lanes would require an increase in signal phases needed for additional movements and protecting movements. This option would still result in significant cost, increased impacts to adjacent residential properties, but result in little to no improvement in traffic level of service. All right, the next alternative is to realign the intersection. As Joel mentioned previously, it wouldn't make sense to bring Winkler up to Oldman, so we looked at bringing Oldman down to Winkler and having one signalized intersection. It would require substantial removal of parking spots, almost 85, and then communications building at the soccer complex would be impacted. And it would require significant additional parking to be constructed. And like Joel alluded to earlier, even if we did that, a signalized intersection still would not be very efficient, still have a poor level of service, and the best option in that case would still be a single roundabout. All right, and then the other option is to look at the peanut roundabout with the island centered on the intersection. That's where we started. And it has the best geometry, it limited the parking disturbance, and had equal encroachment on the northwest and southeast corners, but it did have a significant encroachment on the east side parcels.
That's one point out. This one actually has the most impact on all parcels, on all corners, to just center the roundabout on it. So geometry-wise, it worked great, but that had the most impact on the adjacent residential property, so we were trying to avoid that.
All right, so then we had the design consultant, CSO. They did a traffic analysis to make this a little more objective, so we could look at it and figure out which direction to proceed. So they looked at the 3 different scenarios with the alternatives that we just discussed, and used the current traffic volumes. They did some traffic counts, which interestingly, traffic volumes have increased over the years up there, no surprise. So getting into their analysis, so alternative 1, the existing signals. So without getting into the details, yellow, orange, and red are bad. All right, that means congestion, backups. We don't want to see any of that. So you see the level of service, we actually have some Ds, and this, it's just like a report card. So you bring home a D on your report card, are your parents happy or not? No. So level of service, a D, is not good. And again, this goes back to there's simply not enough area between Winkler and Ullman for those left turn lanes to be effective.
I guess what I want to point out, in some cases, there's only 145 feet between those intersections. In some cases, you need over 300 feet in both directions. So our intent wasn't to try to go through the details of each of these, but just to show there was a very detailed analysis that was performed for multiple options.
All right, so the next one is the realignment single traffic signal, and as you can see here, we're still getting Ds, E's. This one is still not good. Cost would be similar to a roundabout, and it would still have functional inadequacies.
All right, and you can see some queue lanes or turn lane length where you need anywhere from 300 to 647 feet.
All right, and then the last alternative is the proposed peanut roundabout, and this is a good report card. We've got A's and B's. Parents are happy. So no movements exceed the storage length, and again, we've got a minimum level of service of a B.
A's and B's, A's means almost no delay, almost no stoppage. So it's almost free flowing at that point. So just wanted to point that. So then what we did is, so we knew at that point, we looked at all the alternatives, we knew, okay, the roundabout is the best, the safest, the most efficient way to go here. Now, how can we start looking at options that would limit the impact on the adjacent residential properties? So the first thing we did was try to offset this to the west, which would be into the parking lot there. So you see, you still lose a lot of spaces, about 49 spaces, so not nearly half of what you lost if you tried to realign Oldman. But you lose a lot of spaces this way. But so it limited the impact to the people on which would be the east side of the road. But then it was more impact on what would be the northwest corner there, where Mr. Barnett's property is. There was still a little bit on the south, which would be the southeast corner there as well. So that was the first iteration we looked at. And what we were doing is asking, our design consultant, hey, we need to look at ways to try to limit the impacts as much as we can. So that was the first iteration. So the one thing I forgot to mention, so before we went any further with this, we did want to reach out to the county commissioners, because that's their property, and say, are you okay if we were to move this and try to move this further into the Kinney property that you own, with the understanding that we're going to have to replace some parking, so that, and our meeting with them went really well. I said, yeah, we're okay with that, especially since you guys would be the one part of the project, adding new parking there as well. So that was a difference, from a couple decades ago when we were looking at this, 15 to 20 years ago. So with that, we leaned into that a little bit more, and we said, let's keep that offset to as far west as we can go. So that's what we did, as far west as we can get it. And then we took that northern one to your right there, that northern one, and pulled that further south. Pulled that south a little bit, And then the other thing we did is on the south end, you'll see there's slightly less diameter on the south one. And the reason for that is, Winkler Drive is no trucks, no through trucks. So there should not be any trucks on Winkler. So this would actually be a way to try to limit that, actually. So when I say trucks, I mean like semis. I think you still get buses and fire trucks and those things. But looking at semi, there's not supposed to be any semis going down Winkler. So we reduced the radius just a hair. We still see there's very wide paved aprons, so trucks can still drive over that. If they do follow their Google Maps and go where they're not supposed to go, they can still navigate it. But what it does is, for 99% of the traffic that's going to go through there, we can make that smaller and have less impact on those residential properties to the east. So that's what you see. You see very little impact to the northwest corner. It's really just rounding off of the sidewalk or bike path there is really the only impact there. Same thing on the southeast corner there as well. The majority of the property right to the west, give a little bit of bump out right along the property line there between those two properties. So we made several adjustments to try to limit those encroachments on the adjacent properties. And you also see that the other thing we did is we shortened those splitter islands as you come in, so that they are not blocking any of the intersections. Either they should be shortened or put a gap in it, so that you can turn in and out any direction to anybody's driveway. So there's no change in that. So here's that exact same thing. So this exact same thing, only with color in it, so that you can see what that would look like. And the limited impact on the adjacent properties and on their driveways. So one of the things that John had mentioned is we've actually been in contact with the schools since before we did the first roundabout at Oldman and Oak Hill. So we started back when Project Olarski was here, so this has been a couple of years ago, coordinating with them on the improvements to the roads, school schedule, and the roundabouts, and how that would affect school traffic, bus traffic, those kind of things. Actually, when we first started talking about this, Dr. Tess was there. He was a big advocate of this, because he was concerned about some of the maneuvers that some of the students were making as they went down Oldman and turned left, or I'm sorry, they would turn right, go north, they'd cut across traffic into the parking lot at the church, and then swing around in the parking lot and come out and head south. Then that's how because they couldn't turn left. So that was just creating an unsafe condition at that time. So we started this coordination all the way back then and continued to coordinate with the schools from that point to that intersection improvement, to the Oak Hill Milltown, that intersection, and through this one as well. And as we said, John mentioned some comments we got from Superintendent Gabe, and then we also, I think, reported a letter that he sent also recently to you all with this support for the project. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to John. We're almost done.
All right, so some of the key project development steps. So we actually started this last May when we started the engineering analysis and design, and we have completed the preliminary analysis, alternatives. We've contacted and attempted to meet with all of the adjacent property owners and address their concerns, made adjustments like Joel showed with the configuration of the layout. We've had a couple of iterations that we've gone through to try and accommodate the property owner's request to the extent possible. And this evening is our presentation, public meeting, and then after this, we hope to get the design finalized and right-of-way plans and be on track for construction in 2027. Concurrently with the above steps, we are looking at potential funding sources for the construction phase, and we do want to note that the intersection was included with the 2023 TIF area as we anticipated the need for improvements in this area.
So just a little more detail on that. So we included in the area because if and when this project came up, and if enough development happened in the TIF area, we want to be able to use the TIF funds to be able to help support the construction of this project. So if and when we move forward, we would have to update the agreement, because that wasn't a specific project with an estimate that we put in there. We just want to make sure the area was there, so we'd be eligible to use the TIF for this. So that is a funding option for us, is the TIF, if and when we get there. Hopefully there'll be some more development, that we're aware of being proposed in that TIF area right now. That'll happen by 2026. We're also, John and I have been working on several other sources as well, as far as federal and state capital grants and those kind of things. So hopefully, we'll see if some of that's available as we get closer to the tentative construction plan.
Okay, here's a more detailed tentative schedule. Again, last spring is when the preliminary design was initiated. We have the preliminary construction plans. In the process of finalizing design, I should say, and then we'll be looking to get authorization for acquisition after those final right-of-way plans are done, and then eventually get to authorization for advertising on board. If everything goes according to the plan, we'd be looking at construction in 2027. And this is tentative. Some aspects could be completed sooner, but there's several factors that come into play there, including utility relocations. So we also, the question is going to be done when school's out, and unfortunately that's only a 2-month window. Unlikely that it would all get done in those 2 months, but obviously we'll do as much work as we can while school is out.
That's part of the reason you see it pushed to 27 at this point is, while we could likely be ready, in 2026, we would have to start construction right in the middle of the school year. So we thought we'd try as much as possible to do construction over the summer months. So just like we did on some of the other projects, we started before school was out, do as much construction. It won't finish until after school's back in, but hopefully we can limit the impact there. And we've got some nice new roadways on the other side at Oak Hill and Milltown and roundabouts there to move traffic through while this will be under construction.
Okay, and then to finish out, again, we've got references. You don't have to take our word for it. We've got lots of ODOT, FHWA, AARP handouts that discuss the benefits of roundabouts.
And we've got, like I said, we have Julie here from District 3, and representative from CDSO, from Design Consultant, and Mr. Madigan here from the schools. If you have any, put them on the spot, but just questions.
Hey, Joe, how about some public input?
Well, like John said, and we're, absolutely, and that's why John had been reaching out and setting up meetings, trying to set up meetings with all.
No, I'm talking about right now in front of everybody.
Sure. I mean, I'll leave it up to council.
So we're gonna, the city council will offer a couple of questions to Joel and John.
Okay.
And
Yeah, this is our meeting, just not to sound crass here, but this is our meeting, this is their meeting related to this. We've invited you guys to listen to it. At this point, we are not obligated to have you have any time to ask questions. But, sir, we've given you ample time over the last few months. At this point, this is an informative meeting. I appreciate your concern, I appreciate your comments. But you also have to appreciate the fact that we've now wasted 2 minutes talking about this.
I'll sign up for the end of the meeting.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm gonna open this up to any councilman or ladies. That you have questions. Yes, thank you.
I actually did have a question, and it's for the schools. Are the schools willing to put up the money for extra crossing guards while this thing starts out? Because there are several intersections I see, 1, 2, 3, 4, that kids are not gonna know how to navigate. Is the school gonna provide for crossing guards at those intersections?
At this point, we would
look at the final product and determine staffing based on what the need would be.
We would also include pieces of that in our project as well, just like we do vehicular traffic. So any project we do, we require the contractor to provide traffic control for the project. So that's something we would absolutely work with the schools on, you know.
Okay, we're not providing, we're not staffing it, correct? The city's not staffing crossing guards and
Are
that
you
kind of thing.
talking during construction
No,
or after?
I'm talking
after.
both. Because it's gonna get, I mean, I don't want anybody here in this meeting to think I've made up my mind about anything, because I haven't. However, during construction, we've got an elementary school, we've got a school for disabled children, we've got, and adults, we've got a high school, we've got a junior high, we have a lot of traffic. What I want to make sure of, and my primary concern is not just the traffic flow, but it's for the safety of the children who are, I mean, I substitute teach, so I see it every day, every day I'm working. But, and I do that traffic, and I understand the concerns. My concern is that you get all these kids out of school at one time, and if you're constantly stopping traffic to let kids cross the street, are we better off? And if we have to do that, and we may be, but if we have to do that, who's gonna come up with the personnel to do it? I know the city, or the schools are very strapped. I mean, strapped for crossing guards, for cafeteria workers, for para people, for sub-teachers. Those are some steps that I'd like to know.
That's all the kind of things we do during the final part of design, you know, which is traffic control. And making sure there are provisions for all of that, and that's pretty standard stuff. I know a lot of people drive their kids, so, and my guess is maybe during construction, they might even more might drive them, if they're able. If not, we will, that's part of what will be part of our design. There'll be multiple sections in the plans that show here's how you do traffic control, both for vehicular and pedestrian during construction. So every project we have has had that, and we've done lots of projects near schools and adjacent.
The other question I have is, if we're going to go in, and the county's kind enough to allow us to take their parking spaces, we're only going to replace the number of parking spaces that we are eliminating, correct?
That's initially what our plans are, yeah. Now, if you ask our rec department, they'd like to have more parking spaces out there because of the soccer is so.
And I get that, but that's the county's property, even though we use it.
Yes, it's their property, but we use it.
I just don't want to
maintain
see us take 49 parking spaces and pay for 100
it.
in replacement, so.
We will only be putting in.
Those are just some things that I'm,
Right.
and I.
We would only be putting in spaces that we want. Let me put it that way. They're not dictating to us. They're not dictating, those spaces are there because of our soccer program. So the number of spaces that are there, because those are the number of spaces we wanted there. And like I said, you know, Ashley and the recreation group probably like to have a few more spaces, because we don't not only fill those up, but we fill the ones down at the Kinney building too. So any spaces, our initial plan is just to replace what's being taken out, but any spaces we put back will be ones we want to put back for our programs, not because the county's telling us to put those.
Well, I understand that, I'm just saying that this could be much bigger than what it appears. The impacts can be much, everything has a ripple effect.
That's why we're saying we know we're going to be replacing 49 spaces for sure.
49 spaces, which we didn't pay for any of the initial spaces, right? Those
Yeah,
were-
we did.
We
We
did
did
pay for
almost
the
all
initial
of
spaces.
those.
Yeah,
We paid for the spaces, we
city
paid
did
for
that.
the
Okay.
concession stand, yeah, we do, it's all us.
Okay, that's good to know, I wasn't aware of that. And then I had a question, there's something that says a transversible truck apron that's cutting into people's property. I thought that's kind of what it looks like on your map.
But those are on the inside, so here's your lane that you're going on. And depending on the angles that the roads go in and out, sometimes you'll see, as you're going in, you might have a piece paved, there's a lower curb and a little bit of paved apron. On the inside, that's what that inner circle is, it's raised, and so far we've dyed those red, look like.
Yeah, and I've
Those are-
seen those are fine,
That's
to
the
see
same
trucks
thing.
come up over the inside. My question was, do we have them coming out over the outside?
There'll probably be a couple of those, in the design, just like we have up at, we have those up at, because of the odd angles at Milltown in Oak Hill, those exist up there too. if you look while you're driving, there's certain areas that are paved. So those just eat into that grass area in between the sidewalk and the
That's a
road.
residential property at one time. I mean,
Some of
Some.
it, but like any other roadway, so we aren't gonna be eating more into, say, Mr. Barnett's drive into his, because of those papers.
That's just more tree line.
We're just eating up more tree line in between the right of way and the road with those things. So you do a standard road, you know, you got a
so
sidewalk,
pretty much puts
11
traffic
feet,
right up to the sidewalk,
not necessarily.
or potentially.
But we
haven't seen
have it on
the
Highland, so we have it on Highland right now, if you notice, we actually put a 5-foot sidewalk right adjacent to the curb, all along that whole section on West Highland, and that was so we didn't get into the trees. You know, and it's perfectly safe, you know, that's why we do 5 feet instead. In this case, on that side, you're gonna have a 10-foot multi-use path. So you're just eating up more of it, there's just less grass in there. So it's really what we did on East Highland, I'm sorry, yeah.
Let me ask a question. What's the school's long-term plan, and I mean long-term plan for Edgewood? I know we're trying to get a levy passed and all that stuff, but it seems a lot of the challenge, especially with Winkler, is traffic coming out of Edgewood. Is Edgewood still on the very long-term plans for the school, or is there plans down the line to try and get them up on the high school's main campus?
No matter what plan plays out, that building will be used long-term.
Okay. And then my second question is, I'm new to the dance here, and I'm sure my council brethren here and sisters already know the answer to this. I am curious, how did the county get property dead center in the middle of our city?
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it.
We get a lot of pockets and islands like that.
So it just seems strange that we would have to negotiate, because again, it would just seem so much simpler if we could just shift this thing and not have to negotiate with them. But
One of the advantages of being the old guy in the room, you know, the Kinney building used to be the county children's home. It was a farm. And, you know, the kids worked the farm there, kind of like Boys Village did back in the day. It was a farm. And the fields there at the Kinney building was, you know, those are cornfields. So years ago, then the county children's home went away, and but the county owned that land. So the building was repurposed for its current uses, and the fields were converted to playing fields. But I think, again, nothing against the county, but I think the city paid all the costs associated with the conversion of those fields to athletic fields.
It could be, because there are.
Are there any other quick questions from
Yep.
council?
This is probably for Joel and the mayor. What communications have we had with the post office? So there's a lot of mailboxes on the road, and I've seen the post office truck stopping traffic. And if the goal is to move traffic, how do we alleviate that concern and make the carriers walk those routes? Or can we?
So I don't know that we can make them walk those routes. You know, the one thing we could do is work with some of the owners, and if there's a mailbox like that would end up, like right now in the interstate, we could move it a little bit one way or the
Yeah.
other, just with.
And also, yeah, folks who might need to have to cross the road to get their mail. I mean, what can we do for that? Because I'd hate to put a peanut roundabout in, and then there's a truck stopping dead center in the middle of it.
So what I will say is, hopefully they're not stopping at dead center, just
Yeah.
like they do now, they stop at the edge, so you go
Yeah.
around them, and it'll be the same width to get past them as before. Now, there are times when it has to be the property owners that want it, you know, that we've worked with the post office. Now, they're gonna wanna, if they wanna move, they wanna move a bunch of them over, so we'd obviously work with the post office if they want it, and if the property owners want it, we wouldn't force anything like that. But that's happened a couple of times in the past, where people have, they've actually asked to move over, and we work with the post office.
So I moved mine across the street already.
Okay, so like I said, that usually it's the property owner that wants it, but when we've done some projects, we've had, you know, a whole row of people that.
So it's dependent on the property owners. The city can't really dictate that. Okay.
But we work with them, for
What about the trash cans?
sure. Same as now.
They're gonna move them somewhere, the truck's gonna stop in the middle of the road for them.
It would have, that's gonna operate exactly the way it does now, there will be no change.
No, what I'm saying is they're gonna have to stop traffic as well.
They won't stop traffic now anymore, then any more than they do now. The only difference is they should be able to get in and out pretty quick because free flow of traffic goes through there.
But again, if we just have one lane and we have mail trucks stopping and we have, you mentioned they could move over, but we only have one lane.
So it'll be the
Proposing
same,
one
it'll be
lane,
the same width or same width as is there now, so
which
it's
is
no
great
change.
stoppage, yeah.
So there's no change. I mean, right, any street you're on now, you drive around the dump, the truck, or you drive around the mill. Yeah.
So that will still remain
Yeah.
a traffic obstacle.
I can't change the garbage in the.
No, but I'm just stating that will still remain a traffic obstacle, like it does in any street.
Exactly. But we can certainly put a big dent into all the rest of the traffic if we do that.
And I would, so right now, going north of east,
You don't have
it goes from 2 lanes to 3, create a left turn lane on Oldham. So that's where, the bottleneck kind of occurs.
We'll have
Where
future discussions.
you're forced to divide that up into 3 lanes. And because there's no true left turn lane here, there'll just be 2 lanes, with more room to get around a vehicle.
But there will be, because we're shortening those splitter islands, that area is still there, it's just gonna be stripped off. So you're technically gonna have lane, you're not supposed to be in there, but
Would
you
that be
can't.
that transversible
Would you have not voted for it if it was in there?
truck apron?
No, I'm
That's not
talking between
material.
the splitter lanes here, you see the yellow line, and I gave everybody a large handout.
Right.
So you see where the
I think
splitter
the
islands
tip is
themselves are
off.
short, you still have, what used to be,
It's not saying it's a guarantee.
the width of the road will still be there, you still have that width of almost a lane in the middle for large sections of that as you approach each of those. Not supposed to be in there, but they'll still be there, they'll just be striped off like now, we have no yellow lines. So that's extra width to get around. If there's a truck. if there's a
Do you,
stop.
are you,
Is
do you want to bring
the
that up?
center mass for this peanut, Joel, is this also fixed based on state regulations, or can that be
We can have another
condensed to
discussion.
reduce, impact on surrounding properties?
So we moved it as far south as we could to have almost no impact on the northwest. But the further you go south, then the more you're getting in the bulb here. That radius is fixed. You gotta have that radius for trucks.
So that can't be like
Well,
squeezed down?
You could, but if you go further, then you're more impact into the house there. And we're trying to avoid that, so we've moved it back just far enough to almost eliminate the impact on this corner. And then that sort of splits just a little bump out on those two properties right
That's based on your design vehicle.
there.
One of the things that I would like to know, and it might be too
Yeah.
soon to tell, but we put 2 roundabouts up to the west of the high school. I'd like to know how much traffic that's alleviated from the proposed peanut area.
So I would say it only alleviated traffic, those people that like to drive roundabouts and want to get away from the intersection problem we have right now, Burbank and Oldham.
Yeah, that's the
Right,
direction I.
so it's.
And I just wondered if
So
it's
that's
taken
just,
some,
that's just preference. What those roundabouts have done is they've increased the level of service, so more vehicles can get through there with less delay.
and that's my question. Have we done a quantifiable study that shows how many people now, I live to the east, but I go west to do the roundabout and go home.
So our,
And so, I wonder if there are many people who do that, if there, how much of the pressure from these intersections that we're concerned with, or is it too soon to tell?
I don't think it's too soon at all. I think as soon as those were open, people went back over to those lanes and started driving those, and to this day, we still have the backup. So we collected traffic data after that was done, after and before. So when there was free flow in traffic, what it means, well, the data that's in here and the design you see for how it's been is the way the traffic is right now. So that's what the traffic is right now.
As opposed to what it was like before.
Correct. So right now, we have level of service at those intersections. And it's only going to get worse as more developed.
Okay, I think we've gone well over our allotted time. Thank you very much for addressing a lot of the concerns that you've heard from council and from the public. I'd like to continue this discussion. I think there's still a lot that we would like to ask and know, and I'm sure the public feels the same way. So we'll set another public meeting in the future. With that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Ms. Warden. We'll take a few minutes, and since we're already late, we'll start at 7:15. Try not to be too much of have any negative comments, but we all knew this was going to be a long process. We should have started this meeting sooner, and I'm a little aggravated that we didn't do a better job of allowing our timing. So with that, we'll convene the city council meeting at 7:15.
You guys